Our Gospel reading for this Sunday is taken from St. Matthew. We have been reflecting on true freedom in obeying God's commandment, God's law. As I said at the beginning of this reflection, many times we make freedom and obedience to God's law fight each other. It's either one or the other. It's either more of one and less of the other. But we see that true freedom is found in obeying God's commandment. In the first reading from the book of Sirach, we are affirmed in our God-given freedom, the capacity to choose. But Sirach reminds us that this gift called freedom should be used to choose life, to choose harmony with God's will. For God does not command anything that is evil or will destroy the human person. So, by obeying God, we are making use of our freedom in the right way, and it will redound to our good. Someone who uses freedom or his or her freedom to obey God is really choosing life for oneself. In the second reading, St. Paul tells the Corinthians that there is a use of freedom called the wisdom of this world that is so enticing that many people choose to use their freedom that way. But this particular exercise of freedom leads to destruction. But thanks to the Holy Spirit poured into our hearts, human freedom can now be scrutinized, and we are able to discern what is in accordance with God's will. So it is not just freedom, it is also the grace of the Holy Spirit that will enable us to choose life found in God's law and in God's will. And hopefully, through grace and natural freedom, we will be able to find life in obeying God's will. In the Gospel, Jesus tells us that He came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. Wow. So, we do not expect from Jesus, an attitude or even an action that will disregard the law or the will of God. In fact, the way He describes His mission is in terms of fulfillment of the law, fulfilling the law. How does Jesus fulfill the law? By allowing us to be totally free. How can we reach total freedom so that the law of God will not only be obeyed but fulfilled? In the Gospel for today, the fulfillment of the law, the apex of freedom, is found in love. The heart that has been purified by the Holy Spirit and so is able to love purely, selflessly. Only in the heart where true love, pure love is found, can we also find true freedom and true obedience to the will of God. And in that heart of pure love, pure freedom, and obedience, we find the fulfillment of the law. So the fulfillment of the law is not something verified only in external action. While maybe at some point we would look for an external manifestation of agreement with the law, for Jesus that is not enough. I may be doing an external action, but Jesus wants to see the heart. Is the heart totally free? Is the heart totally obedient? Is the heart totally in love? Without that, the external observance is a show. We know that. For example, even in daily life, I may externally follow traffic rules. When I see the red light, I may stop externally. But in my heart, maybe, I don't believe in being a vehicle of safety, an agent of safety for pedestrians and for my passengers. Maybe I'm just afraid that the police officer or the traffic enforcer might catch me. So in my heart, if there is a chance to transgress the law, I would. So the external observance does not guarantee that the heart is totally free to obey out of love. Now, Jesus points to 3 examples where an external observance of the law is not enough. The first is the law against murder. Now, many of us will say, I have not murdered anyone. I have not killed anyone. But Jesus says, wait. If you get angry, if you harbor hatred towards your neighbor, you are already committing murder. So, the absence of an external act of killing is not yet a fulfillment of the law. What is happening in your heart? Remember, the external act of killing begins with enslavement to anger, to hatred, being unfree to love. And so that will lead to a desire to inflict harm on someone. So murder begins in an unfree heart that will probably not listen to the Holy Spirit and will just give vent to one's anger. The second is chastity, not committing adultery. Okay, many people will say, I have been faithful to my wife, I've been faithful to my husband, I have not engaged in any external affairs. But Jesus is saying, wait a minute, what's happening in your heart? If a man looks lustfully at a woman, then adultery has already begun in one's heart. The heart that is not faithful and still entertains, even imaginatively, lustful alliances with people who are not my partner, then for Jesus, that heart is a slave of lust. That heart is not fully free to love. And so that heart is already committing adultery. The third is in the area of truth. Some people take oaths and say, okay, I testify to the truth. We have seen many of that in courts. They do the external oath-taking. We see this also when government officials are installed into office. They even have the Bible in front of them and they solemnly take the oath. Now Jesus is saying, wait a minute, it's not the external oath-taking. What is happening in the heart? If you mean yes, say yes. If you mean no, say no. Be truthful in the heart. Is the heart free to be attached to truth? Is my heart a lover of truth? That's where the fulfillment of the law begins. Totally free to love, totally free to obey God's dictates that will lead to life. After all, where do we experience true life? Only in true love. My dear brothers and sisters, true freedom in obeying God's law is in love, pure love. Pure love is not just obedience. Pure love is true freedom. And true love, pure love, leads to life. My dear brothers and sisters, the world mourned the passing on of this great man, Nelson Mandela. We know the sufferings that he went through. But people who had known him also talked about his so-called conversion, the heart that has become bitter because of discrimination, of imprisonment, towards the end became free to love, and the heart just refused to be victimized again by enslavement. And so, when he got out of prison, instead of mobilizing people to further hatred and violence, he called on people to respect one another, and for the common good, for the good of the country, to lay down their arms, to lay down their desires, their arms, their interior arms for violence and hatred, and to live in mutual respect and love. That is difficult. That is difficult. But it is possible. It is possible for even a heart that has been wounded to become free. Love of country, love of one's neighbor, and in this case, hopefully for us, love of God. True freedom, fulfillment of the law in love. The word has been exposed. Let us now fulfill it.